Here we go. Actually, the broadcasting, I'm going to go ahead and broadcast, let people get in, and then we'll do a sound check. So I see people coming in. If you guys will hang tight for me just a moment here. I am going to stream out into Facebook and do a tech check and an audio check as well, and then we'll get started. So thank you for your patience. Anybody that's in the room, in the chat, could you guys tell me that you can hear me okay? Just put in the chat, all good or something like that. That would be great. Let's see if Facebook's going to cooperate with me today. Okay. Here we go. All right, let's do this here. Sorry. All right, we're at 5 o'clock on the nose here. All right, here we go. Give me 1 second. We're streaming. And hello, everybody. Hi, Solange and Joanna. Hi, you guys. Michelin and Stan and Regina. Hi, you guys. Oh, thanks, Regina. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to check everything. I'm glad you guys can hear me. I'm going to check on Facebook and make sure we're all good over there. Looks like all is running well. And let me just go right ahead and get started here by introducing Bob. And it's so interesting. Bob and I worked together, gosh, I think I hired you, what, 7, 8 years ago, Bob, to help me with, to help me with my own health. So as I do this introduction, just know that I have experience with Bob. I've recommended him to my own coaching clients and my parents, and have worked with him over the years, and have explicit trust in him and the knowledge he's sharing with us today. So Bob Miller is a traditional naturopath specializing in the field of genetic specific nutrition. He earned his traditional naturopathic degree from Trinity School of Natural Health and is board certified through the ANMA. In 1993, he opened the Tree of Life practice and has served as a traditional naturopath for 27 years. For the past several years, he has been engaged exclusively with functional nutritional genetic variants and related research, specializing in nutritional support for those with chronic Lyme disease. He lectures nationally and internationally at seminars to educate healthcare practitioners about genetic variances, nutritional supplementation, for achieving optimal health, and holds live webinars every other Thursday evening for health professionals. In 2016, he created an online certification course on genetic nutrition for health professionals, now training over 900 health professionals in the program. That's impressive. He's a researcher, and to support his growing genetic research efforts, in 2015, he founded and personally funds the Nutrigenetic Research Institute to research the relationship between genetic variances and presenting symptoms. He's got an extensive bio here on research projects and genetic variants with Lyme diseases. Lyme disease was one of the 2 winners for research by the Iliads International Meeting in Helsinki, Finland. And I'm going to be sharing this entire bio with the replay, Bob, so everybody can see how impressive everything is that you've done. And he has, and this is one of the things I'm most excited about, you guys. He's created 72 nutritional supplement products exclusively for health professionals that can be formulated based on his genetic research and designed to support function that may be impaired by genetic weakness. I have that experience with you myself, as we did our interview, or we did our time last week that you generously gave to me to help me see what could be going on. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really excited to see what you have to share, because it's very different from the things that I've seen in the past. And I have done interviews before with people on genetics, and just have to tell you that you are so in depth about everything, and there is no detail missed with you. So thanks again. And I'm just going to let you take it from here. I may interrupt with a few questions here or there, and welcome everyone to ask questions in the Q&A. I'll be fielding those towards the end of this webinar.
Sure, and if there's questions very specific to what I'm saying at the time, we can address those as well.
Okay.
Well, let me, Carmen, thank you for setting this up. You're a true pioneer yourself, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. And what I want to start out by saying is that I think there's change in the air. The old model was the pill for the ill. What's the diagnosis? What treats that? I was just talking to a pharmacist who worked in a hospital for many years. And she said many of the doctors have been there for a while saying that this isn't working anymore. The old model was, somebody had an infection, you gave them antibiotics, miracle medicine, and everyone was well. But unfortunately, things are changing a little bit. And I believe what's happening is we are beginning to see more chronic conditions that are related to environmental toxicity. Mm-hmm. And that's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's look at some of the things that are happening. Chronic illness among children is skyrocketing. You know, when I was a kid, we used to call it adult onset diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 7 and 8 year old children are getting what we used to call adult onset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the other thing that's changing is our hormones. Again, I'm a geezer here at 65, and when I was 12, the girls I went to school with looked like little girls.
Mm-hmm.
Now today, you look at them, it's like they look like 18 used to be.
Yes.
So I think I've done, when we look back historically, we're going to see that we made some serious errors. For example, the plastics, they're everywhere. They're in the water, they're in the oceans. Our polyester clothing is now have 92% of the American water supply has these microplastics from our clothing. There's xenoestrogens.
Mm-hmm.
Then we decided that, gee, let's get our animals to get fatter faster. We can make more money by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's give them growth hormones. Oops. So
Mm-hmm.
guess what happens when you take the growth hormones?
Mm-hmm.
That comes over to us. And if we have an opportunity, we'll talk about mTOR and autophagy just a little bit.
Yeah.
Then we have good old Roundup or glyphosate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to look back on that someday and say, oops, what were we thinking?
Yeah, I'm doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have time, we might get into that a little bit, how glyphosate impacts what's called the heme cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacts our ability to detox.
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, the jury is still out, but more and more people are believing that EMF, chronic exposure, 24/7, 365, phones on your body, Wi-Fi, cell towers, may be having an impact. And if we have time, we can get into that a little bit as to how it upregulates the calcium voltage channels and creates superoxide and peroxynitrite.
Okay.
So when you look at what's happening, multiple chemical sensitivity through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are people that can't even live in a house because the smells. They can't be around people with perfumes on. The other thing that's happening is mast cell activation. I'll admit, when I started out as a naturopath, we didn't even talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
It was only maybe 5 years ago that I learned what mast cells were. And mast cells are very important. You know, they're white blood cells that kick in, and we have a bacteria or some other pathogen or a parasite. They kick in, they create an oxidative burst, they make superoxide, hydrogen peroxide, cytokines, histamine, and they're there to kill, and they do their job. Without them, we wouldn't survive. We'd die of infection. However, some of the research we're doing is showing that epigenetic factors, again, things that we weren't exposed to before, are altering us in a way that these mast cells are overactive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a traditional naturopath / health coach, so I'm kind of like the last person that people show up to. You know, they've been everywhere else. They're not sure if we're a quack, but they're desperate. They've heard about us. And, you know, probably 85 to 90% of those people have upregulated mast cells.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the lectures by Dr. Thea Hardy of Tufts University, he believes that there's a strong relationship between mast cells and autism.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about autism. It used to be 1 out of 1,000, now 1 out of 42. Mental health issues going through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just turn on the news and I just think, what is happening to people?
Mm-hmm.
Where's their common sense?
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of elementary school teachers, and I say, if you've taught more than 5 years, how are the kids today versus 5 years ago? Invariably, they are different.
Mm-hmm.
More excitable, can't focus, angrier, more sensitive.
Right.
When I talk to college professors, tell me about the freshmen compared to 5 years ago. Everyone says they're different,
Mm-hmm.
sensitive, offended easily, you know. You know, when I think of, it was a little before my time, but World War II, you know, the boys were storming Normandy in a hail of bullets. Now they need safe spaces because, and put who you liked in the election aside, but when you need a safe space because your candidate didn't win, if you're an 18, 19-year-old guy and you need a coloring book and a safe space, what?
Yeah.
You know?
What's going on there?
Yeah. And I talk to a lot of young girls, and they'll say they're frustrated, and I say, why? They said, I can't find a man.
And it's not that they're not out there, it's the kind that's out there, correct?
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
when I talk to pediatricians, I do a lot of consulting with physicians. You know, they'll come to me and say, Bob, I need a little help with this. So probably half of my practice is actually working with medical doctors. And when I work with pediatricians, they'll tell me that many of the young boys, you know, are getting the breast development. Sperm rates have dropped 53% since 1973.
Oh my gosh.
We don't have to go down to zero until we're infertile. And then, you know, 10% of the population has usually been gay. But as I talk to counselors and things, they say so many people are like, no, don't call me he or she, call me they. And not only do they want that, but adamant, offended if you don't.
Right.
Many of the male frogs are getting ovaries. Male fish are getting ovaries.
I heard
So
that.
if we have time, we'll look at, you know, how this impacts an enzyme called COMT, catecholamine methyltransferase. Testosterone supports it, estrogen weakens it, and this is where we clear dopamine. So when you look at how angry everyone is, I mean, what is wrong with people? You know, they're even in our office, some of the girls, you know, I have some young girls here, and they're in tears the way people are screaming at them, you know. And it's like, what is wrong? I think everyone's in this stressed state.
Yeah.
So clearly something's up. And so we have to look at the impact of environmental factors upon us. So that's why that's the work that I do. You introduced us as doing genetics. And a lot of people say, oh, that'll tell us what color hair you might have. Well, maybe. Where your ancestors came from, sure. And, you know, first, you know, disclaimer, we are not medical doctors and we are not geneticists. Geneticists will look at your genes and say, you know what, it looks like you have a predisposition to fill in the blank disease. That isn't what I do.
Right.
Okay. We are looking at function. Now, let's go back to traditional naturopathic philosophy that, you know, was ridiculed as quackery some time ago. And the old-time naturopaths said, you know, I think it's inflammation. And, you know, if you go back to Louis Pasteur, he was the germ theory guy. He's the guy who said, it's the germ. And clearly, he was correct. But he had a counterpart, Antoine Béchamp, who said, you know, Louis, you're right, there's a germ there, but I think it's the terrain of the body, the environment that allows that germ to survive.
Yes.
And that was naturopathy, which was, you know, just ridiculed and, you know, thought of as quackery and, you know, these guys ought to be in jail who say such nonsense. But now the scientific community, I'll never forget about 8-9 years ago, saw an article, major discovery on all disease. I thought, I wonder what that is. And they said, we've decided it's inflammation. Now, for those, you know, for those of us who are the old-time traditional naturopaths, we were like, duh, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's talk about how do we get inflamed. So, you know, sometimes we make things more complicated than what they are. So the whole premise of my software and the way I go about doing things is looking at, is there something going on that's making more inflammation? And what might that be? And we'll go through that when I go through the pyramid. And then the second component is, how are we doing on making antioxidants? And from an inflammatory standpoint, it can be either one or both. It can be overproduction of free radicals, underproduction of antioxidants. That's, to me, the base of what we have to look at. Then we need to look at how are we detoxing. And we're talking about more than just, you know, milk thistle and liver flushes. I mean, in the early days, you know, we lived on colon cleanses and liver cleanses and all that kind of stuff. And I believe that we need to go well beyond that now. Just as the pill for the ill's not working, even some of those holistic approaches that we take clearly can be helpful, but have some limitations. So genetically, we started looking at how are things like autophagy, that is the cleaning of the cells.
Mhm.
How is, and everybody's heard of methylation. I mean, that's gotten way so much attention. Most people don't look at things like glucuronidation,
Mhm.
sulfation, acetylation, glutathione conjugation. We also need to look at phase 3 and we need to look at phase 1.
Mhm.
And so in my opinion, when you find out, is somebody making more free radicals, and we can go through a couple of those, is someone impeded in their antioxidants, that's the place to start.
Yeah.
Now, again, I go way back and, in the early days, we gave antioxidants and, we did the best we could. But now I believe when you look at functional genomics, you can actually see where there might be some patterns of inflammation being created. Now, before I get into functional genomics, let's talk a little bit about genetics 101. So we've all seen the ladder that twists.
Mhm.
And on either end, you have a nucleotide. One of those from mother, one from father. And there's only 4 of them, A, C, T, and G. They're abbreviated. And at the moment of conception, boom, you're locked in. That never changes. 50 years after you're dead, if there's tissue left over and somebody measures, you're going to be exactly the same as you were at conception. Doesn't change. Now, the expression of them changes, and there's all kinds of, people say about affecting your genes. Well, you can upregulate them, downregulating, but if you have genetic mutations, you've got them. Now, even though I do genetic mutation work, I'll be the first to admit that it might only be 25% of what's going on.
Mm.
For example, 12, 15 years ago, we learned about MTHFR. Oh my gosh, I've got MTHFR. I need to take methylfolate,
Mhm.
sometimes, So again, we're applying that old pill for the ill. I have MTHFR, I need methylfolate. That backfires probably as much as it helps.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that for sure, because during our conversation, I told you I was taking methylcobalamin because I'm heterozygous, which lost the lottery on that one for MTHFR, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you said that may not be a good idea right now, and I've never heard of that. Like I've always heard, and and I'm with you on all of this. I've been tracking this for the last probably 14 or 15 years. Mast cell activation and histamine responses and all of that. But can you just take a moment to say, give us a little explanation of when it's good for you and when it's not good for you? Because that was something I'd never heard. And I know that there are going to be people, we're talking to the general public, but we're also talking to practitioners and coaches as well. So
Mm-hmm.
when is it not a good idea to take the methylcobalamin as your source for MTHFR?
You mean methylfolate?
I mean, methylfolate, sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
methylcobalamin is the
My
methylated
bad. Yeah.
B12. Yeah, I'm
Methylfolate.
sorry. Yeah, methylfolate. Well, firstly, if you're pregnant, you want to get on methylfolate immediately and take it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because what it does, it supports a process called mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin. That's the growth of new cells.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have trouble getting pregnant, not having a miscarriage, or having a deformity if you don't have enough methylfolate.
Mm.
However, the amount of people who are pregnant at this time is, kind of small. So so for when we take methylfolate, it upregulates mTOR. And this might be a good time for me to do a screen share here.
Okay.
And actually, this is based upon one of my studies that I presented on Lyme disease, but it's relevant way beyond Lyme disease. Oh, I got a message that you've disabled my screen sharing.
Hold on. Well, I didn't disable it. Yeah. I just didn't enable it. There you go. Try that.
All right, let's try that. There we go. All right. So do you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Let me just move things over here a little bit. There we go. So mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin, is the growth of new cells. And do you see my pointer as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that causes cells to reproduce. However, mTOR is indiscriminate. It will replicate healthy cells. It will replicate cancer cells. And hold on to your hat, it replicates COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yes. Now, and by the way, I'm not saying this is a cure for COVID-19.
Right.
I'm not going there. But I'm just saying that there's literature out there that says when you get COVID-19, And if your immune system or some drug doesn't kill it, this is what replicates it.
Okay.
Now, autophagy is the cleaning of the cells. And, as you know, when people get older, they'll get those brown spots on their hands or their face, age spots, sunspots, liver spots. Well, that's because our cells are constantly dividing. And when that old cell dies, autophagy is what has to grab it, recycle some of it, or get rid of it. So when we get those brown spots on the skin, that's when the autophagy is not as robust as it should be.
Okay.
Now, as I said, this comes from a study I did, I believe it was 2018 on Lyme disease. And I showed those with chronic Lyme had genetic factors that would allow mTOR to be overactive and autophagy to be weakened. Now, as you know, some things that are getting really popular right now is intermittent fasting and the ketogenic diet. So what happens when you go on intermittent fasting? Think of mTOR as the construction crew, autophagy as the janitors. When you're eating all the time, mTOR stays turned on. When you intermittent fast, you take nutrients away because you can see they're fed by amino acids, glucose, sugars, iron, glutamate, folate. All of those stimulate mTOR. That's why bodybuilders will take a lot of the amino acids, particularly the leucine, the glutamine, that really stimulate mTOR to make muscles grow. By the way, I think they're at much higher risk for serious conditions with COVID, but that's another story. So what's happening is, we are, again, xenoestrogens. We spoke about that. The IGF-1, possibly the EMF. We're putting iron in things. We could be taking too much folate, especially if not pregnant. They all stimulate mTOR and weaken autophagy. So that's why intermittent fasting has shown such incredible results, because it slows down mTOR, speeds up autophagy.
Yeah, I do that every day. I mean, probably 6 days a week, I do intermittent fasting.
Then, on the other hand, ketogenic diet, as you primarily eat fats, you're not getting the carbohydrates and as much protein. That slows down mTOR. So that's why for even some people with serious illnesses, they see much better improvement when they do intermittent fasting or keto diet. However, there are genetic patterns that I don't think we'll get into. I think they should see them in the certification course. There are certain genetic patterns that ketogenic diet is the worst thing to do, and intermittent fasting is the worst thing to do, because they feel horrible on it. And that's why I go back to, we get so excited that intermittent fasting, woohoo, right for everybody. Maybe not. Ketogenic diet, right for everybody. No, not really. I mean, there are patterns if you don't use your fats properly, or if there's problems in the heme cycle, intermittent fasting is a disaster. Now,
I've seen that. I've seen that with both keto and intermittent fasting.
Sure. And by looking at the genome, you can get clues as to whether that's good for you or not. So back to your question of folate, folate stimulates mTOR. So right now I've been advising my clients, if you're not pregnant or you're not trying to deal with homocysteine or something, now might be a good time to go easy on folate and methionine and glutamine, and try to maybe eat organic without the growth hormones. Okay, and not do those protein powders that build muscle. Now, do we need some? Sure. Are some people overdoing it? Of course. That's why some serious bodybuilders, die of kidney disease by the time they're 50.
Yes.
Because they're just pushing mTOR all the time. Their detox mechanisms can't handle that.
That makes sense.
So again, I go back to, we have to have personalized for the individual. We can't just have, when I started out, in the early days, we had the books, arthritis, these herbs, and now I'm totally rethinking that we need to look at what's happening. So let's go to the pyramid. Okay. So that's the wrong pyramid. 1 second. Let me get the.
And just as a reminder to those of you out on Facebook, if you put your questions in the comments, I'll go ahead and I'll be going between them. So I will definitely be checking there. So if you're listening on Facebook, go ahead and put your questions in the comments and I will field those for Bob since he can't see those.
Okay. All right. So here is the pyramid that we made. And in my software that, someone decides this resonates with them. And by the way, this is not for everybody. This is not plug and play. Hey, let me plug this in and it tells me everything to do.
Right.
This is for the person who wants to dedicate 30 to 40 hours of education, wants to pore over the reports, wants to think about it. Because the last thing we want to do is have somebody sign up for the software and then scream at us, well, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, if you don't take the education, if you don't put the time into it, you won't know what to do.
Yep.
So
just like anything when you're learning.
Sure.
Yep.
So this is not a, run this functional genomic and boom, here's what I do. Great. I don't have to think. If that's what somebody wants, don't do this. Okay.
Right.
It would seem unusual that I'm trying to talk people out of it, but they just get angry. We get frustrated. This is for the serious practitioner.
Right.
Who really wants to be a healer, likes to learn, wants to put time into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't put time into it, you get frustrated, then you blame me and, that whole thing. So, okay. So let's look at what can cause inflammation. Fenton reaction. So this goes back to 1895. A medical doctor by the name of Dr. Fenton. And most people have never heard of him. Now, what happens is when inside the cell we'll make energy, and sometimes an electron flies loose and combines with oxygen to make something called superoxide. Then we need something called superoxide dismutase that makes hydrogen peroxide. Then we need catalase, glutathione, thiodoxin to turn that into water. If that doesn't happen, that hydrogen peroxide will combine with iron, this is the symbol for iron, and will make what are called hydroxyl radicals. So how does this happen? Well, usually somebody has a little mitochondrial dysfunction. They might have genetic mutations, and I think I didn't finish my thought that when you get these genetic mutations, let's talk about that. So again, we talked about those 4 nucleotides, and the only thing that your, one of the things that your DNA does is make enzymes. And enzymes take substance A, pull in cofactors, make substance B.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of it, what a miracle it is that we eat fats, carbohydrates, proteins, drink water, breathe air, expose to sunlight, and everything comes from that. And it's enzymes that make that happen. And when we have genetic mutations, as we call them, sometimes that A to B is not quite as robust as it should be. So for example, there can be genetic mutations that you may not make enough glutathione or recycle your glutathione. There can be genetic mutations that you actually absorb more iron. Very common in the English and Irish. By natural selection during famines, they're the ones who survived. So if you don't have enough catalase or glutathione or thiodoxin, and you overabsorb iron, you can get what's called hydroxyl radicals. Now, this guy can be tricky because you can overabsorb the iron, turn it into hydroxyl radicals, and be anemic, and think that you need more iron.
Mm-hmm.
And you take more iron, and you're worse. Yeah. So it's called the Fenton reaction, and that's why we look there first. So I'll show you when I actually dig into the software. When you pull down the menu, you can actually see the genes. And there's one key word to everything I'm going to say tonight: potential. Mm-hmm. Genetics is potential.
Right.
It's not a for sure. It's not a gotta be. It's a potential. So, but on the other hand, in many, many ways, it tells you where the potential might be that you never thought of looking before. So if somebody has genes that they likely overabsorb iron, they don't make enough glutathione, strong potential that this is what's going on here. Mm-hmm. So you can, with precision, target where the inflammation might be coming from. Now, the next thing we look at is something called NOS uncoupling. So I'm sure everybody's heard about nitric oxide.
Well, maybe.
Okay.
We did an interview a couple months ago about nitric oxide, but who knows who's listening now about the same,
Right.
the topic. But so just a real brief overview of that would be great.
Sure. Nitric oxide is a gas and it dilates your blood vessels. Nobel Prize in the 80s. But, it's needed. That's why men sometimes need Viagra or Cialis because they don't have enough nitric oxide for an erection.
Mm-hmm.
Why, people carry drugs with them to put under their tongue when they get chest pain
Mm-hmm.
because it increases the nitric oxide. Now, this is a tricky one. We need a substance called BH4 tetrahydrobiopterin, combines with NADPH, oxygen, arginine, and the nitric oxide synthase enzyme is the enzyme that does it. So this enzyme takes BH4, NADPH, oxygen, and arginine, and it makes nitric oxide if everything's going well. If you would have some, let me draw here a little bit too. Let me annotate. Let me get a drawing tool here. There we go. So if everything's going well, you get nitric oxide. However, if you don't have enough NADPH, the NOS enzyme is not working properly, you're BH2 dominant rather than BH4, rather than making nitric oxide, you make superoxide, free radical.
Mm.
That combines with nitric oxide to make something called peroxynitrite. Very oxidizing,
Mm-hmm.
but there's more. That further suppresses the BH4, and this thing just spins around in one circle.
Mm-hmm.
So many times, these are the people that have cold hands and feet or Raynaud's, or blood pressure issues, or inflammation, because peroxynitrite suppresses the immune system.
Mm-hmm. Autoimmunity as well. I know Raynaud's phenomena is an autoimmune condition. So could this cause problems across the board with autoimmunity, or are there specific autoimmune conditions that are affected by
Well,
this?
it does suppress the immune system. So it is associated with some, the peroxynitrite is associated with some cancers, but
Mm-hmm.
it's probably all over the board as to what it does. Now, tell you what, why don't I jump ahead here? Well, no, I'll go on to the next thing on the pyramid. So the next thing is glutamate. And I won't go into too much detail here, but glutamate is what makes you intelligent, highly motivated, go-getter. In excess, anxious, bipolar, schizophrenic, but it needs to turn into GABA. GABA is the don't worry, relax, be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm absolutely convinced that most of the people who are doing this work have a little bit extra glutamate, because they're driven, they're again, very high in the Northern Europeans.
Yeah.
Glutamate needs to turn into GABA. GABA is the don't worry, relax, be happy.
Mm-hmm.
There's many genetic or epigenetic factors that inhibit the glutamate to GABA conversion. When that happens, maybe sensitive to bright lights and loud noise, maybe a little bit of tremor, little paranoid, a lot of anxiety, vivid dreams, nightmares, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of people taking GABA with good success for anxiety and even sleeplessness at night. I have a couple people that said, "Oh my gosh, how did I go so long without this?"
Mm-hmm.
So would they then be those people that have that problem? Is that a good indicator if it helps them?
It could be, but again, we got to get away from the pill for the ill.
Right.
Because what can happen is that you can have excess glutamate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got some genetic mutations on the GAD enzyme that doesn't turn glutamate into GABA,
Mm-hmm.
you can start taking GABA and it helps you. But then it starts bearing glutamate and can actually make you worse.
Okay.
So if glutamate and GABA are low, GABA, wonderful. If you're having trouble turning glutamate into GABA, what you need to do is you need to work on the glutamate to GABA conversion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because one of the things about GABA is I often say I'd rather have you make it than take it.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to support glutamate to GABA conversion. By the way, glutamate is also one of the things that comes down to make glutathione.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And by the way, this is the map that I've created called the inflammation map, and you can't see all of it here. But this is the map that I have hanging up on my wall. And we look at all of these genetically. So I said, this is not for the faint of heart.
Right. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, but I was just zoning in on a piece of it here. All right. So where am I at here? So the other thing that can create the inflammation is, these are the obvious: gluten, not breaking down histamine, oxalates, those kind of things. Then the heme pathway is quite interesting. Not a lot of people don't know that. The heme pathway is when we take succinyl CoA from the Krebs cycle, glycine, which can be impacted by glyphosate, goes through multiple steps to make heme. And of course, we tend to think of heme as hemoglobin, but it's also needed by what's called the SUOX enzyme to turn sulfites into sulfates. And if we don't do that, these sulfites can be inflammatory, and sulfation is one of the phase 2 detox processes. And if you'd like to listen to any of the lectures by Stephanie Seneff, I would encourage everybody to go to YouTube and Google Stephanie Seneff, PhD from MIT. Brilliant lady. For those who are health professionals, she's going to be speaking at my September conference, September 18 to 20. And she believes that glyphosate and other things is really impacting our sulfation. So if there's genetic mutations here in this heme pathway, this is where people often get hangry, where they're irritated, frustrated, they get hungry, and then they eat and they feel better. And the reason being is that when they eat those carbohydrates, it comes down through here and feeds this pathway, okay? And then they feel better. But if these porphyrins don't go one to another, hang on to your hat, they will actually block GABA receptor sites. So that's why people can be very irritable until they get something to eat.
Okay.
And this is where intermittent fasting doesn't work. Okay. Because those porphyrins go up and they're just about out of their minds because they need that. And for people who have this severely, they kind of freak out because I'll tell them, you know what, until we get this under control, why don't you take a sip of, or a tablespoon of ice cream every couple hours? And they're like, you're a natural health guy telling me to eat ice cream?
Yeah.
Well, temporarily to feed that heme cycle, and ice cream has glycine and the sugars in it. One of the most perfect comfort foods for people who have that going on. Not the long-term solution, but at least gets you out of the mess for a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Ray Peat, P-E-A-T. He is, oh gosh, he's been around for a really long time. And the first time I ever heard of this, the ice cream calming factor comfort food thing, was when I was reading information from him. He was telling people, if you have problems sleeping at night, get a little tiny tablespoon or two of ice cream, put a little bit of Himalayan salt on it, and see if you can't sleep better. And by gosh, I was such a guinea pig at the time. I was like, okay. So I did that. I don't think I woke up at all for the first probably 5 days that I did that. I mean, I slept through the night for the first time. So, but he's fascinating too. Yeah. He's got lots of information by him.
And again, that's not for everybody.
Right.
If you're diabetic or you have a dairy problem, well, whatever, of course. But if you do have problems with this heme cycle, until you can figure out things to get it out, ice cream, honey, and I tend to think this is possibly why some people become alcoholics, because it feeds it.
Yeah.
Or the some of those power drinks, Red Bull, things like that.
Yeah.
They really feed this cycle, and that's why people can get addicted to it. Now, this is my favorite subject. This is the last thing on the pyramid, and that is what I think is going on with a lot of individuals. Remember I spoke about the NOx enzyme, NADPH oxidase. By the way, Friday at 3 p.m. Mountain, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live with Dr. Jill Carnahan, and we're going to be talking just about NADPH.
Awesome. You said Friday? What time?
3 p.m. Mountain. So people have to convert that. But if you go to Dr. Jill Carnahan's Facebook, she'll have it announced there.
Yep.
and it'll be on replay as well. So I'm going to be talking completely about NADPH. But anyway, I spoke earlier about the NOx enzyme. Without it, we die of infection. However, I believe a lot of epigenetic factors are overstimulating it, making mast cells, making cytokines, making histamine.
Mm.
We need cortisol to break down the histamine.
Mm-hmm.
How many people have adrenal fatigue today?
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, back in the old days, yes, give them some adrenal and some licorice and all that. But I like to give the analogy, if you have a horse and they're trying to pull a cart that's got too much weight on it, let's try taking some of the weight off the cart rather than giving the horse a drink and an apple.
Right.
But I believe that we have just got so much histamine going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens is that we need something called HNMT, histamine N-methyltransferase. And that's what breaks down histamine. Now, here's where I want to get into the genetics. Okay. So we can look at the genes for HNMT and we can say, oh, look, there's no mutations at all. Everything's just fine. Or we can say, ooh, they got a lot of mutations there. They might be having some trouble. So when you've got mutations in HNMT, that may lower by 20, 30% the ability of this enzyme to take out histamine. However, there's something called SAMe that's the cofactor. So if we've got trouble making SAMe, you could have perfect HNMT and you're not going to clear histamine.
Mm. Okay.
On the other hand, when we make mast cells, I mean, the intelligence of the body is pretty incredible. The body's got intelligence and it says, we've got a foreign invader in here. I want to keep this histamine hanging around here. I don't want to clear it. So mast cells will calm down HNMT so that it doesn't clear the histamine. Again, histamine isn't all bad.
Right.
It plays an important role. Excess is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So what intelligence there is in the body? Mast cells tamp it down so that the histamine stays around to kill the pathogen. Now, if this is a short war where we kill somebody, great. If we keep shooting the citizens, we have a problem.
Right.
And I think that's what we've got going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, we could be having upregulation of the mast cells and excess histamine. You could have perfect HNMT. You could have all the SAMe you want, but if this histamine is more than this can handle, you're going to have a histamine problem. So, you know, people sometimes get their genetics reports and they say they're green, yellows, and reds, and it's like, oh, I'm red, you know. Well, maybe yeah, you are, but there's a lot more to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the 3D chess game played underwater.
Mm.
Multiple factors.
Yeah.
Multiple factors. You can't just look at one gene and make a decision based upon that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make mistakes when you do that. Oh, you've got MTHFR, you need folate. Oh, you've got this, you need that. Yeah, maybe. And I'm going to show you in a minute in the software, we have gone to a brand new level that we actually make software that takes these maps and puts the individual on it. So you can see the patterns in the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what I think is happening in a lot of individuals. NADPH, I'm fascinated by this. It's an electron donor. It donates an electron. So what does it do? We already spoke about we need it to make nitric oxide. We need it to recycle these antioxidants to take them from oxidized to reduced. We actually need it to take something called heme, put it into ferritin. So a lot of people have low ferritin. They take more iron, it doesn't go up. They just get more inflamed. We make something called biliverdin, which calms down mast cells. And we actually turn some heme into carbon monoxide that stimulates antioxidants. So this is NADPH is one of the most important things we can do for recycling our antioxidants and knocking down inflammation. But this is where I'm totally intrigued. Knox will say, we've got a foreign invader, iron, give me some oxygen, NADPH, give me an electron, let me make free radicals, make mast cells, make histamine. And again, we tend to think of free radicals as bad, but they're not. They play an important role. They kill pathogens. You know, they act as signaling molecules. They're not all bad. But when they're in excess,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they start to do damage.
Yeah.
And I believe what's happening is epigenetic factors, and we list them all here. I don't know if we want to go through them all. But again, epigenetic factors that we weren't exposed to 50, 75 years ago, I believe are just kicking this NOx enzyme. And I coined the phrase the NADPH steal.
Mm-hmm.
That NADPH, rather than doing all these good things, upregulates the NOx enzyme in the mast cells.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And we see that. So, since we have the general public listening as well, a lot of this is going to be like, whoof, right over the head, right? Some of the things that they can relate to, when they hear the word histamines, they think allergies, right? Oh, sneezy, runny nose, this and that. But if you have some knowledge about, the other histamines, right, it can show up in any way: pain, rashes, depression, brain fog. Like, histamines aren't just allergies we're talking about here. We're talking about systemic inflammation, head to toe in many cases, where people have no idea that that's what the problem is.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So any examples you want to give on what mast cell activation, or at one point I actually looked at that for myself. I'm like, what is going on? So I learned way too much about mast cell activation. Didn't turn out to be the problem, but that's the rabbit hole we go down when our minds are curious,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to blow you away here. I mean, for those who are practitioners, they're going to have this aha moment. There's something in the body called renin. It's made in the kidneys, and it turns into angiotensin 1. The ACE enzyme turns it into angiotensin 2. That's why people take ACE inhibitors for blood pressure.
Right.
Then that makes something called aldosterone. And we've only started looking at this recently. And that causes you to hold on to sodium, excrete potassium, can also raise your blood pressure. But there's an enzyme called ACE2 that takes these guys are inflammatory and vasoconstrictive, turns them into something that is anti-inflammatory and vasodilative. Now, somebody said ACE2, I think I've heard that. COVID comes in using ACE2.
Right, yes.
Okay. So purely speculative, but perhaps one of the reasons we go into that cytokine storm is because ACE2 is maybe chewed up a little bit by the COVID. Purely speculative. I'm not making that statement, just speculative. Then this angiotensin 2 makes the IL-6, which is part of the cytokine storm. Now, this is research that's probably about 2 months old. Now, again, we didn't do the research on it. We just combed the literature. And I don't know that anybody's connected these dots. When NOx is upregulated, we make superoxide, hydrogen peroxide, mast cells. This superoxide combines with nitric oxide to make peroxynitrite that we already spoke about. Then we make the histamine. Hang on to your hat. There's literature out there. This isn't just Bob Miller opinion, peer-reviewed literature. Peroxynitrite, mast cells, and histamine stimulate renin. And this just becomes a vicious cycle that feeds upon itself. And then also glucose, dopamine, and testosterone also feed this pattern. So I believe what we've discovered, and again, let me just say, theory only, speculation. But as you know, sometimes children get strep throat and they turn into pandas.
Yes.
Purely speculative, purely hypothesis. Is this what might be happening that kicks this off?
Wow. Okay.
Not saying it is, not
Right.
making any claims. I'm just saying this is something we need to research. Why would a strep throat have that effect? Because it could be making the mast cells. And again, that theory might be totally off the wall and totally wrong, or it might be a major discovery. So I just pass it on because I know there's, probably some health professionals on here and, maybe they want to ponder that. Maybe somebody wants to research it. So again, I'm not saying that's happening. I'm putting that out as a hypothesis that needs to be investigated.
Right.
To me, it makes sense that is a potential mechanism that could be happening here.
Okay.
But nonetheless, what we've been finding that as we give people superoxide dismutase, as we do things that calm down the mast cells, as we do things that calm down the histamine, or we do things that support the ACE2, they get better quickly. By the way, all these blue things over here are supplements that I've formulated.
Okay.
So for the health practitioner who can sell supplements, we can actually target each of these areas. And that's what we teach in the online certification course.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, I'm going over this in 45 minutes to an hour, but
Right,
you know,
right.
in the online certification, we take you step by step.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and let me just say this too, for, you know, the health coaches, practitioners, naturopaths, anybody that's listening as a practitioner, you know, we can hit many roadblocks when we're trying to help people. And, you know, the Institute for Functional Health Coaching was founded on 7 essential things that every human being needs, right? Whole food, fun, safe movement, you know, stress perception, sleep optimization, and so on, spirituality, addressing old trauma. But, you know, when you hit a wall and you know that you've done all of these things, you've supported your clients, you've given them the resources, they've taken the action, and let's say you're 3 months into the relationship and they're feeling better. Of course, you can't make those changes and not see some improvement, but they're still not quite there yet. This is a really important part to understand, is that you could do everything exactly right, but sometimes this is out of your it's out of your scope of practice or knowledge, just sticking with the basics, and you have to go deeper. That's where labs are done, and that's where we start to dig into genetics, and that's how I found you. I know I had done everything to figure out what was going on with my own autoimmune condition, and I came to you, and I remember telling you, I eat this way, I live this way, and you said you've got everything dialed in, so let's see what's missing, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we found quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it can be a very important tool for working with your clients and going beyond just the basic things. And honestly, with the environmental triggers out there, you know, that are pulling the trigger on our genetics here, we should all be concerned about this, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not going to go through each block here, but this is your NRF2 keep 1, the production of NADPH, the production of glutathione, the production of SOD, sirtuins that are involved in SOD and catalase, and then here's your detoxes, neurotransmitters, and your methylation. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to jump to the software. Let me go there. Just give me a second to pull it up, the way they can see what it looks like. And we actually have a sample in here.
And I do have a question here. Someone was asking, she has a concussion and was asking, does the mTOR help nerve cells? Like, is that something that can affect someone with, you know, with a concussion or head injuries or traumas that way?
You mean upregulating the mTOR?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, anytime you need, you know, anything to regrow, you need mTOR.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, there are times to push it,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it's about balance. You know, you have to make sure that it's not excessive. And so here I'm actually going to go into the software, and here's something we actually did at it's called Hershey demo for our Hershey conference. So when the genetics is uploaded, now here's a pyramid for the individual. And you can see that there's little buttons down here. This is the genetics. There's a symptom survey they fill out, and these are the labs. So, and right now we're just using Great Plains urine organic acids.
Mm-hmm.
So so their color code, you can see there's green. Here's a yellow. Maybe we'll see an orange, and then here we'll see a red. So the more orange and red it is, the more mutations.
Mm-hmm.
So you can then, you know, click on this little radio button here, and then what we do is we rate them from +3 to -3. +3 means they don't have any mutations. -3, they've got the maximum that anybody has. So it creates a bell curve.
Mm-hmm.
And then same way with the symptoms. You can look at the symptoms because, again, you just don't treat the SNPs. And then the labs, and you compare them all. Now, say, for example, if you want to see if Fenton reaction is going on, you click on here, and then it gives you a little explanation. And then, remember I said enzymes, DNA makes enzymes. Well, these are the enzymes that transport copper.
Mm.
So I think everybody knows heterozygous, homozygous, you know, all those kind of things. So these are the copper transporters. And in the software, we actually look at a pie chart, you know, how common no mutations are, 1 or 2, and that's going to be all over the map. Then we create a bell curve that shows how many people have no mutations, 10%, 20%, the average in that person. So the doctor can go down through and just get clues as to where there might be a lot of them. So that we go through copper and then we put questions with it that might be related to that. Then we put labs that might be related to that. Then we actually put supplements. Again, it doesn't tell you what to take, but the health professional needs to know that I think I need to support this and this might be a good idea. So the software is never going to tell you what to do. It just gives you clues if you're having trouble with copper and you need to support it. Here are some options for you. And then actually, there's messages that come up here that are based upon this person. Again, gives guidance. You can never replace the doctor,
Right.
but you can. It's like a clinical assessment tool, giving them knowledge. Then here's your SOD 1. Then you're more on copper utilization. Then again, these are things, and if you'd like to choose them, like hydroxyl blocks helps you with iron, you can choose that. And now the really cool thing about this is although we've formulated products, okay, invariably there are people that say, oh, that's a great supplement, but I've had a bad reaction to fill in the blank. Okay. So we've now created this. We work with a company called Personalized Nutrients that actually will make a custom supplement for the doctor.
Like a compounding pharmacy would do.
Compounding pharmacy, yes.
Fantastic.
So say, for example, you decide that, I think I really need to work with iron here. You can go to the supplement report and you can buy the product as a health professional. You can buy the product called hydroxyl blocks. You can private label it, okay? Or you can decide, you know what, I think I need to custom make this. For example, say somebody's got a lot of COMT and you're a little worried about quercetin. You may want to take that out. On the other hand, if somebody has a boatload of histamine, there's clove in here. Well, you may want to take that out. So we give you the ability to click here and it brings up the ingredients in that product. And as the person overseeing this, you can decide, they've got a histamine problem. I think I'm just going to take the clove down to almost nothing. Or you could take it out. Yeah, you know what? They've got a lot of COMT. I think I'm going to, take this down. Boy, it looks as though they're having a hard time recycling their glutathione. I'm going to take this guy up. Now, I was just talking to the programmers today. This will take us a long time to do this, but we may actually put some helps in here that tells the doctor which ones to put up or down. And maybe somewhere down the road, like an automate, you push it and it'll actually change the numbers, but that's way down the road.
Yeah.
So if somebody's having difficulty converting beta carotene to vitamin A, well, you may want to go more than 2,500. You might want to go to 3,500. So, and then when you're done, you just, I'm not going to go through that procedure now, but then you can actually send it to Personalized Nutrients. They'll compound it, send it to that person.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let me just make this point too. After working with hundreds of clients with all kinds of problems and conditions over the last, decade plus, one of the things that I learned, very early on, through my own experience was fillers can affect you. So even if someone is taking a thyroid medication from a compounded pharmacy and it's as simple as it gets, like levothyroxine or something, there could be something in that particular compound or that particular medication as a filler that affects them, right? So it's very hard to find supplements that don't have things in them that can affect leaky gut or, can be intolerable to somebody as a filler. I mean, I've done so many compounded medications over the years of my own when working with my own thyroid problems. This is really nice because it doesn't look as if, and maybe you do have them. Do you have things like microcrystalline cellulose and things like that in these supplements, or can you really do this
well,
clean
the beauty
as
of this is when you make it for the person, there's no fillers.
Right. That's awesome.
So this line that we carry, it's a little on the expensive side.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, they only make around 200 bottles at a time.
Right.
So no fillers.
Right. So important.
Yeah, because I've worked with supplements that had fillers. Probably worked for 95% of the population.
Right.
But for some individuals, those fillers are just a little tough.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about the personalized nutrients that we use here, and we call this functional genomic nutrition line, 150 to 200 bottles made at a time. Now, again, that jacks the price up, but for the person who can't handle the fillers, and then the other beauty of this is if, sometimes you'll take 2 or 3 supplements and they all might have the same ingredient, you can get too much.
Mm-hmm.
What we do here is if I like hydroxyl blocks and I also want to add HMOX to it, these will all be combined into one bottle, but it will default to the highest level of any one bottle, not add them up.
Yeah.
Because I've seen many people, it's like, oh, this has methylfolate. Oh, do you know this has methylfolate? Oh, look, this one has methylfolate.
Yeah.
They never knew it, but they were really overdoing the amount that they were taking.
Yes, I've seen that before. I've seen that. Yeah. And that's the other thing when it comes to, taking a multivitamin. I'm not a fan of multi anything. If you're going to be taking other individual supplements alongside of things like that, usually people are overdoing it. I cannot tell you how many times I've looked at people's supplements and said, do you realize how much iron you're taking or how much folate you're taking or calcium or whatever, because you're taking 4 different types of, supplements.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Now, this is, I just want to point out that the Nutrigenetic Research Institute, we do the online education. This software that we looked at is called Functional Genomic Analysis, cloud-based
Mm-hmm.
software. The genetic test we do is our own, called Your Genomic Resource. And we never sell it to anybody. It's not going to go anywhere. And then Functional Genomic Nutrition is the line of supplements. And then you can either have them custom made if you wish.
Yeah.
Then if somebody wants to learn all these things, because again, this is not for everybody.
Right.
This is for the serious practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
NutrigeneticResearch.talentLMS.com is our online certification course. You can take the first couple modules for free. I would rather have people take it for free and decide, I'm really excited about this, or, oh, heck, what did I get myself into? This is too much hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, we're not standing on a rooftop. This is for everybody. This is for the
Right.
serious practitioner,
Yeah.
who wants to dig, wants to study.
Yeah.
And this is what the kit looks like that gets sent to an individual. Just how small it is. You spit or buccal swab. And then there's the website for functionalgenomicanalysis.com. This is only for health professionals. This is not for the public. We get general public coming here all the time. Hey, let me subscribe. It's like, no, prove to us that you've got, license or certification.
Mm-hmm.
This is not one of these things on the web that you upload your 23andMe. We only work with health professionals.
Right.
So
And if anybody's interested in this, that's on my side of things for the general public, reach out to me. Absolutely. So can you go back to that one, the kit real quick, to the Genomic Resource DNA kit?
Yeah.
So let's just say that somebody comes to me and they want to go through this process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can hook them up with a kit. Now, is this going to give them that entire genome report? Like my genome report from 23andMe was years ago. I mean, I've had that thing for years. This does the same thing, correct?
Yeah, we look at about 225,000 SNPs.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's more than them.
No, the old 23andMe had 600,000.
Did it really?
Yeah, but many of them weren't really relevant. So we
I thought they've changed it recently. Someone said they don't get as much information now.
Well, they still have as many SNPs, but I think they've gone more towards ancestry and possibly more things for pharmaceutical. Yeah. But I used to use 23andMe. And by the way, if somebody has an old 23andMe version 3 or 4, it'll work just fine.
Yeah, yeah.
New version 5, again, they've taken out a lot of the functional things.
Mm-hmm.
We're not looking at disease genes. We're not looking at ancestry genes. We're looking at function, potential for function. That's why we call it functional genomics. So there you can see 200,000 SNPs, and the cost to the doctor is $199.
Right.
And that includes shipped to the person, shipped back to the lab, DNA extraction, sent to the software, and the generation of the reports.
Wow, that's great.
We're trying to keep it very, very reasonable. So you get reports for the patient and health professional, the pie charts, the bell curves, and I do want to show the pathway maps. That's very, very cool.
Okay.
Guidance on supplements. You can private label them, custom make them. gives you hints, but you never replace the doctor.
Yeah. And again, let me say this too, for the coaches that are out there listening. I have had coaches that are very interested in the genetic component. This is something to consider. And I really, I want to just take advantage of the opportunity to do some free training. We'll be sharing everything in the replay. So if you're trying to screenshot and get information and all that, I'm going to share the links in the replay, you guys, so you can click them and go out and learn more and take your time to look into all of this. So no worries on that. I'll come to the Facebook page and I'll plug those links in as well there after. We like to get about 24 hours to turn everything around for people.
Sure.
There
Now,
are a few questions on the Q&A. Do you want me to go ahead and read those to you now? Or?
well, let me just show the pathway maps, and we can spend the rest of the time doing that.
Okay, perfect.
So we talked about NOS uncoupling. So this is now a real-time map for that person that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's no mutations, it'll be blue. When there's a little bit, it might be yellow, orange, or red. So remember we talked about the VH4. So you can actually see that where there might be weakness for this person. Again, you have to look at this globally. You have to look at a wide picture.
Mm-hmm. So,
and then if you want to look here, you just click on it and it brings it up and shows you, oh yeah, there's one on MTHFR A1298. The NOS2. Oh, look at those homozygous variants there. So this, for the person who's visual, this allows you to see globally. Heme is a cofactor. So for this person, they've got some real weakness in their heme pathway. So they might be making superoxide and peroxynitrite because of the heme pathway. This person, or it could be because you don't have enough NADPH, or the urea cycle is not clearing ammonia and pushing this down. Or you just don't have enough superoxide dismutase. So you can actually see here, where the problems may occur.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite maps, and by the way, we're going to be improving the visualization of these probably in the next week, better graphics. But here's where I spoke about the, how the renin can upregulate the NOx. Then we look at all the genetic factors that would stimulate NOx, the mast cells, what might upregulate the mast cells. Here's the histamine, how to clear the histamine. So in one visual, somebody can look and get clues where they need support. So
yeah.
That's the last thing I wanted to show. And in our next releases, we're actually going to have messages come up here based upon, and it's going to take me a while to get those in there. But a message might pop up here if somebody has a lot here. Consider iron being the problem. Again, potential. We never say for sure. We never make a diagnosis. Well, there's no diagnosis.
Right.
We're not diagnosing a disease. We're showing a potential where function may be less than optimal.
Yeah. This really takes away, it will really reduces, I should say, nothing completely takes away the throw it at the wall and see what sticks idea that people seem to have, right? They might hear that they've got a histamine problem and they start taking all kinds of things, or, people are very quick to purchase and start taking things or trying things, and have a very, I guess, tunnel vision on specific symptoms and problems, right? They just want to feel better. They just want to take something that makes it all better, but there's such a bigger picture sometimes that we need to consider, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, if I could just do one little shameless plug here, September 18 to 20, we're going to be having a 3-day conference, again, for health professionals, 3 days on mycotoxins.
Oh my gosh.
So we're going to start at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. The whole thing's going to be recorded. And I believe mycotoxins is becoming a huge issue. I mean, we've got Stephanie Seneff, Sandeep Gupta, Bill Shaw from Great Plains, Andrew Campbell. I didn't get him on here yet, but Neil Nathan, Dr. Jill Carnahan. We've got the who's who of functional medicine here.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
We're going to be, talking about like the IL-13, the mycotoxins in mast cells, mycotoxins in oxalates. nutrigenicresearch.org/2020 conference. I don't have it on here because this is for a seminar I'm giving in August rather. But if you register before August 1, there's a lower price. I think it's $325 or something like that.
Okay.
But even at $385 for the health professional, that's a bargain.
Oh yeah, that's 3 days and it's all online. So I mean, you
Yeah.
don't even have to leave or drive or fly or go anywhere to learn. Yeah,
Sure.
that's fantastic.
And there's our contact information. There's the website. If you are a health professional, not the public, you can go and apply. You're gonna have to prove you're a health professional. If you're a doctor, you're gonna have to give us our license. Is not for the public. Don't try it because we have, we're not gonna let it through if you're from the public.
Right.
Uh, and on the website, by the way, we do list doctors who do this for somebody who wants to do it themselves.
Yeah, that's great too. Yeah.
There's our executive director. And again, for the supplement line, again, we only sell the supplements to health professionals. This is not sold to the public.
Right.
To buy
Yeah.
the supplements, you got to give us your license, your certification. This is not for the general public.
Yeah. Gotcha. And we'll include all of that information in our replay for sure. Okay, so let's go to a couple questions. So Valerie, I'm not sure what this question is, but she's asking, and you may not even know what it is either. But she's saying, "What are your thoughts on ID Life?"
ID Life?
Uh-huh. I've never heard of that. I don't
Never
have a
heard
clue
of
what
it.
that is. Okay, so if
I
you
mean,
want to explain,
it sounds like a supplement company or something, but
it could be. It could be. I'm not sure. I
never
just
heard of
wanted to check in and see if you knew what that was.
it.
So Sheena's saying, if appropriate here, do you have? She'd love to know what genes or factors that you know about contraindicate keto or intermittent fasting, which you touched on
Oh,
briefly.
sure. Yeah. Well, for keto, if you go to and I didn't spend a lot of time on this, but if you go to the pyramid and you look at fats, these are all the things that are related to how you utilize fats, how you make bile, all those kind of things.
Okay.
The
Wow.
the keto is related to many times the heme cycle. If
Mm,
that heme cycle is not working and you need to have those carbohydrates every couple of hours. So many times when you see mutations in heme, keto doesn't work. I'm sorry, intermittent fasting doesn't work. A lot of mutations in particularly the FADS enzyme, fatty acid desaturase.
mm-hmm.
Now this person is just fine, but when there's a lot of mutations here, they can't use fats. They try intermittent fasting, they crash and burn.
Okay. And the symptoms of people who don't do well with intermittent fasting, could that be like low blood sugar, shakiness,
Mhm.
irritability, those
Yeah.
things, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And
I
if
know
you
a
get
lot
the
of people with that.
mitochondria working and you get some glycine in, many times you can get them past that. But
Okay.
without doing that and just trying to go intermittent fasting can really backfire.
Yeah. Okay. Mary's asking, what about rebound effects from NO, nitric oxide, or are there any? And then she says, or is this what you mean? I'm not sure what that second part is, but are there rebound effects from nitric oxide?
Well, I mean, there can be. If you push the nitric oxide too fast and you've got too much superoxide, you are going to make peroxynitrite.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's people that will argue on the other side that specifically is supporting your nitric oxide through like some of your nitrates. Like there's a company called Berkeley Life that gives you beets. They claim that actually helped that part. But, I tend to be cautious. Make sure your superoxide's not excessive. You've got enough SOD, then push your nitric oxide.
Okay. And Mary is saying thoughts on that cycle and essential hypertension, which was asked during something you said, probably the Krebs cycle when you mentioned that maybe.
Oh, no, I think I was talking about this cycle here where the angiotensin 2 upregulates aldosterone.
Mm,
That's where you can get the high blood pressure.
mm-hmm.
But interestingly, there's something else involved here because many times people have this and they have low blood pressure. So
Mm-hmm.
we're still scratching our head on that one. There might be other pathways that they get the aldosterone and the NOx without the high blood pressure, but we don't know yet. We're still looking at that.
Okay. Oh, my mom says, "Hi, Bob. It's Doreen, Carmen's mom. You remember
Hello.
working with her?" And my dad, yeah. And she was just asking about the supplements through a doctor's thing, and you've already covered that. It's only available through a doctor or practitioner.
Mhm.
Solange is saying, "Is the test available for clients outside of the United States? I live in Europe."
Oh yeah, we ship to Europe all the time. With customs and all, it can get a little expensive, but yeah, we ship to Europe all the time. Mhm.
Okay. Linda, Bob, I love your monthly teaching webinars. Is the mention you made for training the same thing or different? She's been in and out of this class, so she missed some of what you were talking about.
Well, we have webinars every Thursday evening for doctors, and that's like some case study or something like that. The online education you do at your own pace and study.
Okay.
And if you go to dnasupplementation.com, right on that, well, right here it is. I'll show you. When I log out here, if you go to dnasupplementation.com, online certification course, bang. When when you're new, just create a username and password and you're in. And then we have a course called, we have our original course, but this is the new course for the new users. And first couple modules are free. Don't have to pay a thing. You know, we really want people to make sure it's for them. And the same with the software, they get a free trial. If they have an old 23andMe, they can upload it for free. Because we don't want anybody to spend a nickel until they say, you know what, this is really cool. And this is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We do the same thing at the school. We talk to almost every person that wants to enroll. And I think we've got 100% conversation. And we always say, you know, we're not for everyone and everyone's not for us. We'd like to make sure that there's a good fit there. So I 100% I support that. Yeah, it's a good approach to business for sure. Lori is saying, I had my genome mapped via the Human Genome Project with University of Michigan. Can I send that report?
No, well, unfortunately, that is such a huge file that we can't upload it.
Okay.
I mean, it's gigantic. And our software can't support that.
Okay. Linda said, please show the previous screen with the health professional offer.
Oh, sure.
And then I'm going to go take a peek at Facebook real quick.
Yeah, just request a free trial, functionalgenomicanalysis.com or dnasupplementation.com. Again, health professionals only. You know, we watch this like a hawk, and if you don't provide us with a website or show us, you won't get approved. So don't waste your and my time.
Yeah, and they probably wouldn't want to anyway. It's I think it's a little overwhelming for people who haven't actually been in this space in some capacity, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and if somebody's got an old 23andMe version 3 or 4, go ahead, use it, try it, play around with it. Once you're up and going, it's $25. Only $25 to upload it with 23andMe. I mean, we're basically making this very affordable.
Oh yeah.
The kit $199, and then the buccal swab is $235, $240. I should know that, but I don't. Then again, the genetic info is sent to the online software where you and the patient are notified. The patient enters a symptom survey, and we can manually enter a note test. We're working with Great Plains to get that uploaded, but it's taken a little while to have everybody talk to each other. And then there's a $25 monthly license fee, which is dirt cheap. So all these updates that come along, you know, every time we update the software, you go back and look at anybody that's there, the new information is there.
Wow, that's awesome. You put a lot of work into this, Bob.
Yeah, a couple of years and a little over $2 million.
Oh my gosh. Adrienne says on Facebook, I have Dr. Miller's genetics report, went through a process with a practitioner, but she wasn't good at teaching me as we went along. In the end, a huge rabbit hole to go down. So, you know, Adrienne, if you're wanting to learn about this, since you're a practitioner, it might be it might make sense for you to hop in on that and see if it's something that you're interested in by doing the free trial for sure.
You know, if they're not a practitioner, you know, many times, you know, find a good qualified practitioner who goes through. I mean, there are unfortunately some doctors who signed up for this and all they saw was dollar signs and, hey, I can charge a lot for this, and they didn't get trained. And, you know, we hear the horror stories. And so that's why we sometimes try to talk people out of doing it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If a health professional says, hey, can I charge $1,000 for this? That's when we usually say, this isn't for you.
No.
We don't want the greedy people on board.
No, I hear that. Margaret says, this is brilliant. And Kim says, makes sense in my personal experience with strep throat and mast cell, what you were talking about earlier. So yeah. And that's, again, you know, that's one of those things. It's like that lab that comes in and confirms, oh, you have strep throat, right? This can definitely help to narrow things down for you. I can't recommend genetic testing and this particular type of study and information and support if you are a chronic condition, you know, client out there, patient, person, if you are a person that has unanswered questions about your health and you just haven't been able to figure it out, this is the direction that I believe that people should absolutely go and try if they've tried everything. You know, this is DNA, it doesn't change, right? Like you said, you know, 50 years after you're dead, it's going to be the same. You're still going to have the same mutations, the same SNPs. You know, and again, if you have children too, if you've got kids that are dealing with specific issues, like you were talking about, the rise in ADHD and autism and oppositional defiance and all of those things, and you've tried to take dyes out of food and you've tried other things, like you need to be looking at this. This is definitely something to be considering, especially if you've got children that are having health problems for sure. Yeah. And so, James says, got to be up early. Thanks, Bob and Carmen. Okay. Yes. And again, everyone, there is a replay. That is where most people end up watching these things. For those of you who have stayed on with us, we appreciate it. Bob, I will be getting the links and information from you guys so I can just plug them into the replay. And I just want to say thank you for your time and sharing this information.
Oh, my pleasure. As you
And
can
the
tell,
free opportunity. Yeah.
we really enjoy doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just, oh my gosh, you're just a brainiac. I mean, how do you sleep at night with all that information up in your
Well,
head?
it's been determined that I'm not right. No, just kidding.
Well, I appreciate it.
For whatever it is, I'm a geek, and I just think this stuff is just more fun than a barrel of monkeys. So,
Oh my gosh.
I work from 8 a.m. till 11:30 to 1 a.m. 7 days a week,
Wow.
either talking to clients and/or researching. And to me, it's just my idea of fun is, oh my gosh, the mast cells stimulate renin. I mean, you got to be a real geek to think that's cool, but.
Yeah, but it benefits all of us who cannot go down that rabbit hole that you're going down. So again, thank you so much for being here. And yes, Solange, thank you so much. This is mind blowing. So much great information. And I had told my coaches today, you guys want to hop in because, Bob is somebody you want to learn from if you're going to learn about genetics and all of the information you're sharing with us today. So thank you so much again.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate you very much. I will put the reminder about your September event, the 18th through the 20th, in the replay as well, with a link for people to sign up for that, as well as a reminder about your webinars that you have coming up Friday night, right, with Dr. Jill Carnahan, right?
Yeah, that's on Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Okay, great. So you're going to
Facebook.
stream in where? Where will you be streaming on Facebook? Do you know? Is
On
it on her page?
website.
Okay.
So just search Dr. Jill Carnahan.
Yep.
And
Jill's in my list of people as well, so I'll
Yeah.
share that as well.
Yeah, we're going to spend the whole time on NADPH.
Okay,
And then
definitely.
I think last Friday in August, we're going to talk about the NOx enzyme.
Oh gosh, that's the one I'm going to have to see.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. All right, thank you again, Bob. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everybody, and look for your replay and all of the links. Give us about 24 hours to turn this around, and we'll make sure that we share that with you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.